Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Emma Newton with IPSL Study Abroad and Service Learning Programs, and I'm here with Lindsey and Matt from Origins of Food to talk about the Guatemala One Health program. Lindsey, Matt, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi everybody, my name is Matt.
I'm Lindsey.
We are Origins of Food. Origins of Food is a service learning provider of unique educational programs throughout Latin America and Oceania, and we concentrate on food topics and themes while traveling internationally.
Wonderful, and we're really excited to be here today talking about this really exciting program that we've collaborated on called in Guatemala, and it's called Guatemala One Health, Ecology, Culture, Justice. So what is this program? It's a partnership between IPSL and Origins of Food. It's short term, so 3 weeks in both January and summer term. And participants earn 3 semester credits, undergraduate, graduate, in One Health and food and ecology and culture and all this wonderful stuff that ties us to what we eat. So the program is very intensive and interactive. It's a study abroad and service opportunity, and it allows participants to engage in the culture, food, lifestyle, agriculture, economy, human, animal, environmental health of Guatemala, all firsthand through expert lectures, service projects, and site visits. So we're going to give you a ton more information about this program today and about IPSL and Origins of Food and why you would want to join us in Guatemala. So just a little bit about IPSL so we can talk about our collaboration together. IPSL is a small organization that's been around for about 30 years. And we do short-term, long-term, medium-term study abroad and service learning programs for all users, high school, college, and adult learners. IPSL's mission is to engage students, educators, and grassroots organizations around the world in hands-on service to promote equitable relationships, social justice, sustainable change, and a commitment to our shared humanity. So it's really about diving in, learning about another culture, learning about another group of people, and having a shared experience with them. And so that's why we're so excited to be partnering with Origins of Food because they have a very similar mission. And Lindsey and Matt will tell you a little bit about them.
So as simply as I can put it, Origins of Food's mission is to reconnect people with where their food comes from. So we do this through a variety of different means, but essentially taking you to as many different sources of your food as possible in as many different settings and landscapes and climates to get a sense of our overall food systems and how they function within our economies and within our societies. We like to look at we like to break food into two conversations. One is the scientific conversation around food, looking at how it grows, how it interacts with the soil and the land that it's growing in, and then also looking at the social impact of food. So how food is impacting our communities, our farmers, our environment, and all of the different issues that can surround food, and also really highlighting the initiatives and the innovations that are happening in the food industry around the world today.
And you might ask, why do we do this? We feel that there's been a loss of connection with where our food comes from, and it's really important to know not only where your food comes from, but the impacts that your purchases at home have. So our goal is to create kind of a more conscientious consumer, as well as people who go home and be food activists in their home communities.
And that's what really ties us together, this idea that you're going to take this experience home, have all this information, have all this incredible experience, and then you're going to go home and impact your community and your life through what you've learned. And it's a really tall order goal, but I think we're very successful at it through the unique programming that we put together for this program. So just a quick overview about what we'll do, and then Lindsey and Matt are going to get into the nitty-gritty details about some of the really incredible things you're going to do. Sort of the main themes are you're going to critically examine through a One Health lens the social, political, cultural impact of food production, specifically on all 3 of the main sectors: environment, non-human animals and humans of Guatemala. So what Matt was talking about, we're really looking at both the biological side and the social side, but we're using the One Health lens of framing it with environment, animals, and humans. You're also going to be visiting and serving with a variety of unique grassroots organizations in Guatemala that are doing incredible things in both the food systems and the environment and with conservation and ecology. And just hearing from a variety of experts and local Guatemalans that are working in their own communities to change their communities for the better. So you're going to be visiting and serving with them if time allows, and hearing from them as well, learning from them, and really engaging in a discussion about One Health, about the future of food, about how the global food network works, specifically how Guatemala and the US are connected with food and ecology and politics and social and all the above. So we're going to talk a little bit about the actual program now and the itinerary and some of the organizations that you'll have a chance to engage with on this program.
Right, so the program launches in Guatemala City, where you'll arrive in the airport and we'll pick you up. So really, once you arrive, we will take care of all of your logistics. You don't have to worry about accommodation, food, in-country transportation, translation. It's better if you understand some Spanish, but it's not necessary. So that's something that we like to highlight right at the beginning. And Guatemala City is the capital of the country. You don't see a lot of tourists there. People generally check right out, but there's a lot of stuff, really awesome stuff going on in Guatemala City as far as the historical, social, and economic center of the country. So we like to spend a few days in Guatemala City kind of setting the stage for the rest of the program, so you understand what has happened in Guatemala's recent history and what's going on currently with the social political environment. Just like the rest of the world, it's very dynamic and it changes. So it's really important for you to understand what's happening in the country when we're there.
Okay, so we just wanted to go over a few of the different partners that we're going to be working with in the city. All of the partners that we've chosen to speak with in the capital all kind of give a good context and start a good conversation, like Lindsey said, around the history, around some of the social issues that are happening in the country, and how that's impacting the people. So we will be visiting one of the local museums that kind of hits right into the very recent story of Guatemala's civil war and how that's still heavily impacting the people today and how they're still dealing with a lot of the unresolved issues from that conflict. We'll be visiting an organization called HIJOS. It's an acronym in Spanish, but in English it translates to the sons and daughters of the disappeared. Throughout the Civil War, there was quite a lot of people that went missing, and these are sons and daughters that are starting to provide some sort of activism within their capital city to remind the government that they're still there, that their parents' histories and conversations haven't been lost, and that they're still fighting for their memories. The other organizations that we'll be meeting with in the capital city are people like Peace Brigades International. So they're a group of activists that are based internationally in different sort of international hotspots where there's particularly bad social injustices happening. And their organization is set up in a way where they simply monitor these international situations and provide some sort of support to the local activists on the ground in the way of being almost like an accompanying figure. So through their presence, they feel like they can provide an element of security to the local people and to the causes that they're fighting for.
Right. So the key with Guatemala City is analyzing past human rights violations, current human rights issues, as well as meeting the people on the ground who are working every day to fight those issues, as well as visiting with U.S. Aid, who also does some work in Guatemala. So we'll see what the American embassy and the Americans are doing to also help those issues.
And I think one last thing that's really important to mention about the capital city is just how much of the population lives in that one place. So even though it may not be the most beautiful part of Guatemala, well over 60 to 70% of the country's population lives there. So it is a really important place for you to see, to understand, and to get a little bit of an understanding before heading into the more rural areas of the country.
What I think is so cool about all of the sites that we go to, but specifically in Guatemala City, they're all dealing with this issue of Guatemala's civil war in so many unique ways. Like you mentioned, Hijos. And I just wanted to point out this picture in the presentation of the graffiti street art with the photos, because that was such a powerful visit with Hijos, as they took us around the city and showed us their street art, which is how they engage with the government in making sure that the memory of the disappeared aren't lost forever, and really holding the government accountable. So we're going to see many different ways that organizations are taking social justice action.
Right.
And it's a really cool way to put into perspective what's going on and how to do service.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is it is the capital. So this is where a lot of the top-down regulations are coming from. So things that are happening in the capital affect the rest of the country that we'll be visiting. So it's really important to get a concept of that and to really know what's driving the current environment in Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So from Guatemala City.
So from Guatemala City, we head to Antigua. Antigua is a very picturesque colonial Spanish city, just about an hour away from Guatemala City. We head over a mountain range and you head down into a cobblestone street city that's surrounded by 3 amazingly tall and brilliant volcanoes. And it's there that we kind of base ourselves for the next little section of the program, where we start to get a little deeper into some more of the agricultural themes that we'll be looking at on the program. One of the main crops of Guatemala, one of their main exports, is coffee, and Antigua is one of the major coffee producing areas of the country. So it's a really great location for us to hike up the volcanoes and take a look at a few of the coffee fields. And we do that by partnering with a local organization called De La Gente. De La Gente is a really interesting model of coffee cooperativism. They're a group of about 30 to 40 farmers who are pooling their resources and their energies to harvest and sell their coffee internationally, and are using the help of an NGO to overcome some of the logistical and more kind of nitty-gritty, tricky kind of details in the food chain as coffee is exported from Guatemala to the US.
Also, Antigua will be visiting an organic vegetable farm that supplies a lot of organic veggies to the local restaurants and the local markets. And I think the really interesting thing that we're also doing in Antigua is homestays. So we'll be staying with coffee farmers, as well as learning about what their day-to-day lives are like. And yeah, Antigua is an amazingly beautiful town, and I think you guys will love being there. And we're also talking about Rabinal, which is the next spot that we'll be heading to after Antigua. And Rabinal is in an area that was heavily affected by the Civil War. So we'll be meeting with a community organization there called Cachualum that has helped, was started by many of the displaced families during the Civil War, and they are actively organizing. They're actively organizing families to grow their own food, to keep themselves to eat as well as to market. So a way to get past the atrocities of what has happened is through food. And we'll be analyzing that, how they're working with agroecology, as well as the climate of the dry corridor, and their major food crop is amaranth. So if you've heard of the superfood amaranth, you will get to be very intimate with it this week when we're at Rabinal.
And what I really like about this part of the trip is Antigua and Rabinal are so distinct. We have such a contrast. Antigua is like pretty much the first place where tourists go immediately after they get off the plane. They pass Guatemala City, they go straight to Antigua. So you have sort of this tourist center surrounded by all this coffee that's exported and not even drunk in Guatemala. And then we're going to Rabinal, which is this kind of almost considered this wasteland for Guatemalans, even though there's potential there, and we're going to be working with Cachualum that have done amazing things to bolster the nutrition in the community, sustainability in the community, the ability of the community to be self-sufficient. In this organization, I just wanted to touch on Quechua a little bit more because we do spend several days there with them, learning about sort of this very unique structure. I mean, they have a school there where they really bring back the memory and the life of the Civil War in the area and the family members lost, and as well as teaching the next generation these critical skills in agriculture and seed saving and self-sufficient farming. So it's a pretty impactful way of a community coming together and saying, oh, we have this issue with malnutrition, we have this issue with hunger, we have this issue with, just being self-sufficient. And what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to teach ourselves our indigenous crops, which is amaranth, what you were talking about. So study and contrast really with these two places, and it makes it a very rich part of the program, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to say as well, I think throughout this section of the program, we're really starting to get our hands in the dirt, which is really important. There's no better way for us to understand what's happening in the country, what people are dealing with day to day, or just kind of how their lives, flow from day to day and what the activities look like. And for us to be able to walk up into the coffee fields and harvest some coffee with the local coffee farmers, or to spend an hour, weeding a lettuce bed next to a local employee at the local organic vegetable farm, is just a really incredible way for you to connect not only with the country but with the people as well. You'll see when we go out to Quechua Loom and we're spending time with that community, just how open they are and how willing they are to share their stories and how much they want to hear your stories as well. And it's a really special thing, I think, to kind of perform any of these physical labor and work alongside them, just to kind of get, just the tiniest sense of how their life functions and operates. As Emma was saying, Quechua Loom is a really inspiring organization. And what's also really important about Quechua Loom is that they're really showing how local people can be the source of their own innovation and solutions to their problems. Quechua Loom was and is run by local Guatemalan people. It's not an international NGO. It's not set up and run by people from the States or from Europe. They're very much trying to come up with solutions that are appropriate for their own people and their own culture, which is really significant.
Yeah, and I did want to just say one more thing about the service aspect of this part of the portion. Both IPSL and Origins of Food are service oriented, but we try to do it in a very ethical manner. And so we approach service, both of our organizations approach service really differently than you might encounter with other volunteer organizations. So for instance, in the weeding of the lettuce bed and the planting of the lettuce bed, we do that in exchange for a tour. This isn't a handout that we're doing for them. They are perfectly capable of planting a lettuce bed themselves.
And doing it better and faster than us.
Yeah. and the same with Quechua Loom. They show us the seed saving, they'll show us the planting, they'll show us the amaranth and stuff, but we're really doing this. We're not doing this for them. They're showing us how they do this so that we have a better understanding of what they're capable of. I mean, they're on it. They know how to do it. They're not needing these handouts or anything. So,
right. So if you're looking for a service where you're building something, this isn't really that. This is more learning from the organizations that are on the ground, and we're not going in with our own ideas and concepts of what they need.
Mm-hmm. And that's very important, again, too, because the goal is to bring back what we're learning and the knowledge we're learning to use in our own communities to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining and be activists for justice and equality. So, we're learning, and I think that this part of the program really exemplifies that with the hands-on work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next, where do we go?
Then we head over to the beautiful Lake Atitlan, which is actually an ancient volcanic crater surrounded by 3 volcanoes. So it is an absolutely gorgeous spot, probably one of our most favorite places in the world. And we'll be at 2 different locations around the lake. So the first one is San Juan La Laguna, which is an indigenous town that has maintained its traditional cultures, which is really cool to see because of the high influx of modernization, globalization, and tourism around Guatemala. There are a lot of towns that have lost that connection with their history, but San Juan still carries on with their traditional textiles and natural dyes, which we'll take a workshop on. And we'll also stay with a homestay there, so we'll get to experience the daily life of the indigenous locals in San Juan. We'll also do a volcano hike at sunrise and watch the sunrise over the lake. And then we will head over to IMAP, which stands for the Institute of Mesoamerican Permaculture. And like Cachualum, it is a locally run nonprofit organization. It was not started by anybody outside of the country. It is completely run by the 3 Mayan indigenous founders. So at IMAP, we will be staying at the volunteer accommodations, which are these really awesome either bungalows or adobe huts, depending on which ones we get. And we'll be working with IMAP on various different workshops. We'll learn more about permaculture, seed saving, the Mayan cosmovision, food forestry, grafting, all sorts of things. It's a lot of agriculture, but it's also a lot about the social impact of the globalization of our food system. We'll be analyzing the Beehive Collective's murals, which if you haven't heard about the Beehive Collective, we encourage you to look at their website. They're an awesome organization based in the US, but they do artwork that represents many different globalization topics from around the world. What else are we doing at IMAP?
IMAP's a really inspiring space because not only do they teach you about how they're educating local people, but they also leave you with really kind of important and interesting information about how you can be sustainable at home as well. So they have some really interesting examples of home gardens, how gardening or permaculture or agriculture can be formed in a small space, like your backyard or on a balcony. They have some really interesting examples of appropriate technologies. So something like a solar oven or a solar dehydrator, which is just really innovative ways for them to be processing their foods and to increase the storage life of any of those products.
And the toilet. Talk about the toilet.
Yeah, so they've got composting toilets, which can be a little confronting for somebody who might not have seen one before, but it's a really clean and ecological way of using a bathroom. There's no odors, it's not smelly, it's not gross, it's just like using an ordinary bathroom, but there's no water involved in the entire process. So for a country like Guatemala that struggles with a lot of drought, and particularly over the last few years, a lower amount of rainfall in the area, something like a toilet that eliminates the need to use water is something that's really beneficial to them. And it's a really, sort of fascinating thing to use.
They're also building, they've secured a grant from some international donors, and they're building an amazing amaranth processing facility. So like we spoke about with Cachualum, amaranth is really integral to fighting malnutrition around Guatemala, and IMAP is actively working to have more local farmers growing amaranth, and then they'll have a space where they can process the amaranth and sell it at the market.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see when on IMAP again an incredible example of local Guatemalans totally addressing an issue in their community and just taking it and running with it and coming up with it. And, the volunteers come, but this is completely Guatemalan run,
right. That's right.
Decision making done by them. And, volunteers come and they learn in exchange for helping out. But yeah, just really powerful examples of these really amazing and successful grassroots organizations addressing the needs of their country.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also at IMAP, what's really important is just how beautiful the space is.
Yes.
I don't think any of you have probably heard anything close to the bird song that you'll be woken up to in the morning. And some of the views over the lake and just the sort of the native environment around you is really incredible. And it does provide, I think, a space where you can really kind of take a breath and really soak in a lot of the experiences that you're having throughout the program. And that's really important for us too. I think we've been talking a lot about all of the partners that we meet with and all of the different sort of educational activities that we do. But there is a significant part of this program that's about enjoying the country that you're in, enjoying the sense of traveling and all of the adventure that brings, and enjoying the just incredible natural environments that are going to be surrounding you from place to place as you move around the country.
Right, and also doing a lot of self-reflection, which the space at IMAP does provide. Waking up, like Matt said, with the birds and just finding a little niche somewhere and doing yoga on the lake. It's an amazingly beautiful spot, and it's really a highlight for us.
Definitely.
The self-reflection piece is definitely important because, of course, good service comes along with self-reflection about your impact in the local community. And so we, Matt and Lindsey especially work really hard to integrate that into the day-to-day experience of the program through group workshops and other stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about the course that you'll actually be taking there. It's a really important piece. And this, I can completely guarantee that this is probably one of the most beautiful places you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the textiles?
Yes.
We did. You can see Emma in the slide there.
Yes.
Some nice weaving.
Yes.
She became an expert, and then she bought that scarf, didn't she?
I did. I think the woman was this is our host mom actually, who was teaching us. She's part of a woman's textile cooperative in San Juan, and she was doing it way better than I could ever do. I could see my hands are like all crossed and like I'm holding a string and
you picked it up.
Not as easy as it looks.
No, not as easy. So our last stop really on this program, and wrapping it up, is a pretty important place to understanding Guatemala culture. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so from the lake, which is kind of, if you're looking at a map, very much centrally in the country of Guatemala, we're going to be heading south west towards the coast, to the Pacific coastline. It's a very different area from anything that you would have seen in Guatemala before. We start to drop quite a lot in elevation. It starts to get a lot warmer. There's a lot more humidity rather than sort of dryness. And also what you visually see will change a lot. So the landscape is going to change from kind of a highland kind of environment with a lot of trees and a lot of corn and things being grown to a real jungle environment where if it's not jungle, all you will see is sugarcane being produced. It's an enormous industry for the area, really important for the country. And it's basically as far as the eye can see. Once we hit that that Pacific coastline, it's sugar until we get to the beach.
Right. So we're going from this mountainous, beautiful area in the center of Guatemala where there's a lot of small family farms to industrial agriculture, where it's all the flat land is being monopolized by the sugar industry. And then you'll see some mango trees and other tropical fruits, but the primary crop is sugar. So it's a huge change from where we'll have been earlier in the trip.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys know how sugar is made, but I didn't know this, but it's burned. You burn the fields after you harvest it. So vast wastelands of like fields on fire.
Right. And they do this in the U.S. as well. If anybody's been to South Florida, out near the Everglades, you'll also see the sugarcane being slashed and burned. So it's not just something that happens in the developed country, but it is an issue for the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and unlike coffee, which maybe we don't all drink, we're certainly all consumers of sugar. It's pretty unavoidable, I think, in today's day and age. So it is really important to see how the crop is grown and also how it's impacting the local community, because there is quite an environmental, like Emma was talking about, impact to the local people through the burn-offs.
As well as an economic impact, as most of this land is owned by 3 families, and this is thousands of acres of land that is owned by 3 families. So we'll talk a lot about inequality, social and economic inequality
division
as
of
well
wealth
throughout the program, and the division of wealth throughout Guatemala, and how that's affecting not only people in Guatemala, but this is something that happens in countries around the world.
So with that, I mean, we're also going to be looking at, we talked about the environmental, but we're going to be also working with an organization there.
Right. So ARCAS is our partner organization down on the Pacific coast, and they are primarily involved in the conservation of native animals in Guatemala. So on the coast, it's a really famous area for turtles. That's their natural breeding grounds. The turtles will come up onto the beach to lay their eggs. And unfortunately, there's a large poaching industry in Guatemala. So ARCAS, specifically down on the Pacific coast, is doing a lot of work to protect the eggs, either rounding them up during the nighttime in large groups and then reburying them somewhere that can be watched and safe, or whether it's paying the poachers for the eggs that they've already captured and then buying them off those poachers. So those poachers are still receiving some sort of income, because sadly, a lot of the time, the local people are poaching these eggs, not for any malicious reason, but simply because they they need money to feed their families.
Right. And so we'll stay at Arcus's volunteer accommodation on the beach, and we'll take a tour of what they're doing as well with some reforestation of trees to reattract some of the local bird species that have been lost with this industrial agriculture that's happening on the coast. So it's a bit of a multifaceted approach to animal conservation with the turtles and with the birds. And then from Arcus, we will head up to an awesome little surf spot where we'll spend the last couple nights kind of just relaxing, debriefing what we've learned, kind of enjoying the last few days in the country and surfing. So we'll take surfing classes, and you can just hang out on the beach and really enjoy yourselves.
It's a great wrap up to the program, because this program is intense, and beyond just the actual working with the service organizations and hearing from them, you're also taking a class on top of it, which is actually really critical, I think, to the program as well, because it puts in perspective a lot of the things that we're taking in each day. So just talking a little bit about the class, I mentioned earlier, this is available to graduates, undergraduates, adult learners. You can audit the course. But the course is about giving you background readings and background conversations and learning from different sources already in sort of the global food movement. And also giving you kind of a comparative lens to what's going on in the US. Like quite a few of the articles and things we discuss in the course are actually US based because, food is universal. It happens everywhere. Everyone eats. And we also move food around the world at an astonishing rate. Food produced in one part of the world ends up in another part of the world. So we're all connected into this very global system. And that's really what the concept sort of behind looking at all of these themes, the One Health concept is about. It's about connecting humans, animals, and the environment in the context of this food system, this global food system, and giving sort of each entity the time and the perspective to look at how they're impacted and see how one affects the other, and the interconnectedness of it all, because that's really what it's about. So it's really about expanding your view. We're getting that sort of case study of Guatemala, but even though it's a case study of Guatemala, we're in this one country. Guatemala coffee. We're sitting here in Portland, Oregon right now drinking Guatemalan coffee.
And it's delicious.
It is delicious. It's incredible. And you might not think that on a daily basis, if you go to your local coffee shop, that they're serving Guatemalan coffee, or they're serving coffee from Rwanda, or all over the world. The sugar cane is coming from multiple different places across the world. And so it's really about putting it all in perspective so that when you do go back home and you do start looking at, oh, hey, that cup of coffee that I just bought is from Guatemala,
And questioning the barista, do you know where the coffee came from? And is it direct trade? Is it fair trade? Is it organic? And knowing what those terms mean and how it affects the people that grow those beans, it's really important.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about the direct and the fair trade, what that means and what that actually means for the workers, what that means for the roasters, what that means for you as the drinker, what that means for the environment. There's a lot of different ways to produce food. There's intensive agriculture, industrial agriculture, and then there's the hobby farm. There's everything in between. And we used to know a lot about where we got our food when humans were more connected, but
before the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, before the Industrial Revolution, and now it's quite hard to find real information about the food that you're consuming. And so this course kind of puts that in perspective, and it also just is really about all the different ways we're connecting. So, there's the health level, there's the biological level with diseases, there's the social level, there's the political level. We connect with everyone across the globe in all these different ways, and not just people, but also animals and the environment. So really looking at that. And it's a very nice complement to the actual experts that we hear from on the ground. And also we do... Lindsey and Matt lead almost nightly, but not quite. It depends on the day, sort of reflection sessions. So that's a key part of the course as well, is reflecting on the experience of the day and giving participants the opportunity to sort of digest what they've heard. So that's something that we do. And of course, there's there's assignments associated with the course, written reflections, final reflection project of some kind. There's a multimedia project. So it's very experiential learning is really how you would describe the course. So just a little bit about the fine print of the program. So the program's open to anyone. You don't have to be enrolled in a university or college to attend. You can get coursework. It will come back as 3 semester credits, graduate or undergraduate, but you can also audit the course as well. As Lindsey was mentioning at the beginning of this presentation, they take care of everything. The program is tuition, room and board, health insurance, in-depth orientations, on-site transportation, service placement, all excursions. The only thing that's not included in the program fee is international airfare and personal spending money. But pretty much everything else. You can use your financial aid. Students typically use their spring financial aid spring semester and bump it up to either cover the January term or cover the summer term. And we do have 2 programs running in 2018, which we're really excited about. There's the J-term program. It's slightly shorter, 19 days, January 2nd to January 20th. And then our summer program, July 8th to July 28th, which is 21 full days. So really excited about both those programs coming up in 2018. The application deadline is for January program is October 20th, and we don't have one set for summer yet, but we will have information on that soon. And of course, you can also, AmeriCorps alums can use their Siegel Ed Award as well to pay for the cost of this program, and we work with you as well on that. So just a little bit about the application, a little bit about what we're looking for in participants. People that want to do hands-on learning, because this is a very hands-on program, have a curiosity and an ability to work autonomously, self-motivated. You want to actually integrate into the local culture, because we do homestays. We're very rarely in a touristy section of the country. I mean, we do stop sort of in and out so you can see what that's like, but we mostly stay in these smaller communities and that are made up of Guatemalans. And also be comfortable with this fast pace and sort of the go with the flow type people. So you can submit your application online at ipsl.org. There's an application that has some essay questions, 2 letters of rec, an official transcript, and an application fee. And if you have any questions about all that, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you through that process as well. So
I think one thing we forgot to mention is the food we're going to be eating.
Oh yes, that's very important.
Considering what we're talking about, we'll be eating lots of delicious local food, a lot of corn tortillas, and a lot of vegetables. So hopefully you are happy on the high vegetable, high corn tortilla diet. Lots of rice, and of course lots of delicious coffee and local juices. Yeah. So sorry we forgot to mention that.
It's very good, and we get the food also comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes it's restaurants, homestays.
We'll cook a few times.
Yeah, there'll be a couple of cooking sessions, so you'll kind of have experience with food at all levels. I mean, we're literally talking about food all day, and then we're eating food. So, but yeah. So that's pretty much the end of our presentation. Be sure to check out the websites, Origins of Food, theoriginsoffood.com and IPSL.org, our social media page, Facebook and Twitter, and of course...
And Instagram.
Oh, and Instagram as well. Yes, Instagram is very important. I forgot about that one. And you can find more information about the programs there. And then, of course, feel free to contact us. Here are all our emails, Lindsey, Matt, I'm Emma, Ariane, who's not here, she's the IPSL Director of Programs, you can also contact her. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And
sorry, just one comment. It's at theoriginsoffood.com, which is not a huge deal, but if you go to our website, the email is there, or just email Emma and she can connect us.
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. It is the Origins of Food, kind of important. But yes, I definitely suggest reaching out to Lindsey and Matt as well if you want to learn more about specific organizations or just what being in Guatemala is like, because it's a beautiful country. And I had an incredible time when we were there just this past January with a group of students, and it was amazing.
It is. It's like a little paradise.
Yeah. Really. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you learned lots. And please reach out for us for more, and hope to see you on our trip.
See you next year.
Bye.